So the Thanksgiving Proclamation was published today, and apparently there's one written each year by the president, and it talked about the history of the holiday and some of the history of the country, and it really makes you think for a few reasons. One, it mentioned how the pilgrims came. It was a long boat voyage, of course, and when they got here, a lot were sick, some didn't make it, and they had a hard time as expected, and so they really worked for this country, for naming it, for developing it, for all the civilization that was brought to it. And that was immigration then, and for a long time after that. A lot of our ancestors here, including mine, came over by boat back then, and they were pretty much on their own about it. You have to be healthy, and by that time they had those requirements, so if anything it was harder. You couldn't just take a chance here if you didn't meet the qualifications. Even if you made it over on the voyage, you'd be sent back, and that went on for a long time. And so it was never real easy for people to make it here, and that weeded the people out that didn't so much love the country and really want to be here because of all those hardships that they had to go through, and they had to find themselves here with no help at all. They had to do something for the country instead of expecting the country to give something to them. And that's what's real different now. And the problem with it being different is that you can lose some of this. You read about the proclamation I looked up in the archives, the one that George Washington wrote. It wasn't all that much different from that one. And, well, it goes to show, because you're carrying on that American tradition, but we're getting away from it by making it this country more of a safe haven for pretty much anybody, for any reason at all, at any time. And as Tucker Carlson said, that there was these illegals that were here, and they were protesting something again as usual, and he said, but he doubts there'll be any kind of deportations over that or over anything else, which is about right these days. Anyone that touches foot here, even if they don't become a citizen, they're just always here, and somehow being always here, you qualify for the government health care and all the emergency services, and sometimes a lot more. It seems like the foreigners are valued more than what the Americans are, and it reminds people that, well, for one thing, everybody has a country, everybody here in the world. There's different countries, different cultures, different people, and everyone comes from one, and you're likely to have the culture in you from the one that you came from the one that you've descended from. And everyone has one, but lately people want to bring what they have over to here, and they expect the people already here that have been doing these same things for centuries to change on their behalf. And if they do become a citizen, which is extremely easy, as we saw a couple weeks ago, this person from Mexico said that she didn't know how to read or write, and she's amazed she got to be a citizen. Well, amazed isn't really the word, but what exactly is she going to contribute to make this country better with not even knowing the basics? And that's supposed to be on the citizenship test. So, okay, just someone else that doesn't know English. We don't have enough yet of those. And So it just reminds you that, well, each country has to have its nationalism. It has to have its culture. It has to have something about it. And when you just let any cultures in, like the Muslims, they don't like dogs, they don't like bacon, and it's not even they just don't like some of these normal things, but I mean, they attack over it. They just don't, and they demand that you don't do those kind of things. And those are the things people have been having for the centuries that they've been here and developed this country into what it was. The Muslims didn't come and find this and develop it, but like we did. And so the change from before, when it was a real privilege to come here and people took it seriously and people appreciated it, and if you're willing to come by boat knowing you might not make it and knowing you might not even really be welcomed with open arms because you're new and it's on you to prove yourself. You can't claim to be a victim or anything in the new country. It's up to you if you want to get by, or else you go back to your other country because everybody has one. And that was what people thought. They didn't think of doing it any other way than that. And that's what they set out to do. And some set out knowing that they'd never go back to their home country, but that was okay. They must have learned the language beforehand because you had to know it here. And they assimilated because that's what they knew they wanted to do. And they were escaping various things, and they didn't want to bring those things with them. They're trying to get away from the trouble, so they don't want the same trouble over in the new place. And that's the problem these days. People bring their trouble with them. You see a rise in terrorism, a rise in crime, and you see a lot of friction with between all these nationalities, because the America, it's kind of in this crossroads about, is it going to hold on to this kind of culture like what you read about in there, or is it just going to become like an open borders, just anybody come in? And that's what the elites are fighting for, because when that happens, there's going to be unrest. And when there's unrest, they can control us better. They put in all these useless laws and all these different ways to control, because that's their goal. Control, enslave. And you can't really do that when people are getting along, paying attention, and have pride in themselves and their country. Like Soros even said a few decades ago that America's going to be the hardest one to break. And he's having a hard time with it. Like, he met with Pelosi last week. It's been published in California to have a meeting about what's going on with this, because they're not succeeding in this, since not just with Trump in there, but they see the Trumpism, the effect, everybody behind it. They see that people behind it's really even stronger than him, which was shown in Alabama, when Mitch McConnell said that if he was to campaign for Luther Strange, they'd actually get moving with the agenda. And of course that didn't happen, even though he did it. And they saw that he lost by a lot there, because that's not what people wanted. They wanted that effect. They wanted that populism that he started, and they'd continued with it. And so that's what scares the elites, is how strong people are. They're patriotic and just strong for the country and preserving it. They don't want the refugees to come because they see all the problems that they cause in the other European countries, and they don't want it to be changed like that, to become dangerous and to just become that kind of chaotic unrest where there'd be all these new laws. And just like in Sweden and in Germany, they can't have these fests anymore, and they don't dare say why, that within 2 years they stopped having all these out in public. It's gotten that way, and their goal is to have that here too, but they see people won't have that. I mean, you see these guys going on YouTube after there's a Muslim attack, over in Europe, which happens often, and they say, why don't the Muslims just get done with them first and then try to come here, because they're not going to be met with that same kind of rolling over about it. They'll be met with the same force they think they're going to bring, and they'll be driven right out. And that kind of attitude, which is what we've had, except now it's divided enough because half the people don't really have that, simply because they hate the president for one thing. But that can't just be new. They hate a whole lot of different things. And so the elites, they take advantage of that hate to bring in the other people that also hate it. So it's different now. The immigrants, they don't have to. In fact, they preferably don't like it all that much. And you're able to come. Whereas before, I mean, you came and you really became part of this country. And that gets back to the nationalism, which is, it's not politically correct, so nobody says it. Well, Bannon touches base on it when he says that this is a country of citizens, that citizens built this country. We're told over and over it's a country of immigrants, 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 so therefore we have to take anyone and everyone just because at one point in time there were immigrants here. Well, sure, because at one point in time it was just land. It wouldn't be this if there weren't immigrants, but that doesn't mean it has to be ongoing forever. And nowhere in the Constitution does it say you have to just keep unlimited. Like you have a glass of water that's full and you just keep pouring and pouring and it just overflows, makes a mess. And there's a limit to how many immigrants that we even can take. And also we're forgetting that, as I've said, we're allowed to say no for any reason at any time for any period of time. We've shut down immigration totally for years in this country before, decades ago. And now people can't even dream about banning people from certain countries that have terrorism. They can't even dream about making it safe because they say it's racist or some kind of stuff. And they're just so afraid. They're so afraid to say what is. And then some people say, like Trump, and others say a lot of what people are thinking, what people have been thinking, and it's refreshing. And that's that every country has the traditions, and it's the people too that have the nationalism, and it's not necessarily just all one race, because like as we see here, for example, the Antifa and the alt-left, those guys are mostly white, and so's the alt-right. They don't get along at all, so it's not just that you'd be the same race and get along, but it's the same culture. Like Carson fits in good with this culture here, with the American, and that a lot of people do, but letting anybody and everybody come in just changes it so much, because these new anybody and everybody's, they seem to have a real aversion to some of the people here that are descendants of the original founders. And they talk all on and on about this racism, but a lot of it goes in the opposite direction. You have people that for no reason don't like people that are the same color that I am, and that had ancestors that came over like that. And when they have people come over here illegal, and I point out about how our ancestors came by boat and had it hard and such, and they just brush, they say like, well, who cares about all that, and they say a bunch of just awful things, and they go on about this white privilege and all this kind of stuff. And I kind of thinking, like, if you don't like it so much, everybody has a country, why not go to that one? Why not go to the one that you're from, where you don't have to deal with any kind of people that you hate? It gets to be a bit much when you have that they call the reverse discrimination, I guess, and it gets tiring because you don't vet and look at who comes in here. So you get these people that happen to be from these countries that they don't like people of European descent. That's what it is. They don't. You haven't done anything to them. I mean, even if you have ancestors that they didn't come over on in Columbus's ship, and they didn't come over in the 1620, the pilgrimage, and that even didn't come over before slavery or during slavery. It's like we're just still guilty by association because we look like the people that, some of the people that did, like the 4% of the people that owned slaves that were wealthy. We happen to look like them, so they just don't like that. They don't like that, and it gets tiring when people don't like people that are my ethnicity for no reason at all, and yet we're not supposed to say anything. We're supposed to just keep welcoming them with open arms, no matter what kind of hatred they have out. If I was like that to a different race, that'd just be the end. I mean, anyone does that, it makes the news, and nobody should be like that, but it shouldn't go the opposite way, too. And that's what's happened, because they're associating all these traditions, Thanksgiving and Christmas, and even the founding fathers, everything, they're just associating that with white people, and a lot just don't happen to like white people. They talk about this discrimination all the time, but they don't talk about the black on white crime that's very prevalent for their 13% of the population. They don't talk about the illegal alien crime that's against white people. And honestly, like, everybody has a country, and the people of European descent happen to build this country. That's why it's part of the West. It's the people, too. Like I say, not every single one. There's Carson, Sheriff Clark, of different people, and people from Japan used to come, so it's not homogenous, and that's not what it is. But before 1965, people got along, they assimilated well, and they came into this American culture just like I would have to do in Japan if they even let. They don't let really anybody else. I know they don't let Muslims come in because they want to stay Japanese with their culture and with their people. It's not that they're being racist because other people are a different color. It's that they happen to have that culture. And the fact that they all look that same way is just because they've all been in that same place and they've practiced those same traditions, and they don't want too many other people coming in, not because they look different, but because they'd act different, they do things different, and then it wouldn't be Japan anymore. Just like in the United States, we have these the Chinatowns in most cities, and everybody likes those. Everyone thinks they're cool. They go and they like to see what they do, their traditions and how they live. But if this whole country just became that, then this would be China too. But we already have China. It's America, and it was a blend, really. It was a blend. It was mostly European people and some others. But when you let any and every immigrant stay and every illegal alien that touches base stay, and they say all these racist things towards people that share my same background, it gets very old. And what makes people also think it gets old and sometimes even snap is that they're not allowed to say anything about that. It's not a politically correct thing. It's not politically correct just to say that nobody should not like somebody just for what they think someone's ancestors did, or because they're a different color, or because of this and that and that. Why don't they just say that nobody should? Why is it always have to be the illegal aliens have to be victims, or the ones that are doing something wrong? If they're not of European descent, they're victims automatically, no matter what, and we're just supposed to deal with it and watch this country that a lot of our ancestors built just crumble like that by basically illegal invasion put on by our government. And that's the problem that they have a lot with Trump, is he's just trying to stop that. He's trying to preserve that, and that's why he brings all this up often, I think, to show that the Second Amendment, all the amendments, just to try to show that that's what we're trying to preserve, because that's what this happens to be. And I'd want other countries to preserve what they have too. I mean, people from here, they can't go into Mexico, demand that they speak English, and stay as long as they want, get free stuff, and they can't change it around like that. They have their own food, their own different things, and it was, as I say, for a while, a nation of immigrants. But when you've basically filled it up, like you get everything off the buffet table that fits on your plate, it's full, you have it all, you take that. You don't just keep on and on and on and on. And there's not assimilation. Some cultures assimilate better than what others do. Like before the 1965 Act, when there were that handful of Japanese that came, they assimilated well. It just happens to be. They go well with the traditions, and they do. Some cultures assimilate better than what others do with others. And there's nothing wrong with that at all. But you shouldn't force that into this country just because we've been fed over and over that it's a country of immigrants. And we shouldn't have to just take anybody, no matter how uncomfortable it makes everybody. And it shouldn't make the people who have been descendants of people who have been here, who can actually appreciate the work and the civilization of it and the history of it. We shouldn't make us feel like outcasts. We shouldn't make us feel like we're guests here, or that we're inconveniencing the new people or anything. That's just not the right thing to do, because the new people have their country. And it's just the luck of the draw for the most part. But that still doesn't mean that you let anybody and everybody come in here because you were lucky enough. That doesn't mean that. It doesn't mean everybody who's nice or everybody can be an American. You just can, and some just aren't, and they don't leave their culture behind. And we just can't have that, and we have to say that more, just like we used to say that. Over time, we've had a whole lot of rules about who could come here, and they've been not politically correct. They've been straightforward, but honestly, they've worked in preserving all this culture that we have here. Like John Jay, the first Supreme Court Justice, said back then that he said that this country here, it's this country by people of similar backgrounds, speaking the same language and the same religion, and it's like this country and this people were made for each other. And that's what it was. He said the country and this people made for each other. You just can't say that now about these people touching down here. And if they do become citizens, they do have the same rights as anybody whose ancestors have been here for centuries, or people, or even just people that were born here that they have always been citizens. Anyone who's new, they could be here 5 minutes and they're considered an American, and under the Constitution they have the same rights as everyone else. And I actually think that's good, because the Constitution can define things like that and it doesn't change. So even though I don't really like that, I'm glad that it's written that way, that it's so straightforward, that the people, that once you're here and you're here. But what that means is we just have to make it harder for them to be here, because once you're here, you're here. Once your papers are there, you're in. But these days, since it's not hard to come here, just because you have papers doesn't mean that doesn't mean your heart's an American. It means you're going to have the same rights under the Constitution. But do I think somebody, like one of those refugees, somehow they're all men all the time, do I think that one of them that came over here, made it over here, became a citizen somehow, even though he was violent before? I read a story about that. Who is a citizen, has equal rights under the Constitution, which as it should be. But do I think he's as American as I am? No, I don't think so. And I don't think that he should have been let in here, because he's obviously, his heart's back in there where all the fighting is. He should go fight for his country. What's with the men fleeing? when meanwhile the men from here are joining the army to fight to protect this country, and those ones, they're just trying to get away, and it's just not the same as what it was. And with that proclamation, it reminds people that we might want to get back to that, and in order to do that, we have to talk about this stuff. And when people talk about it, doesn't mean that they're always right about everything, but they should talk about some of the problems, no matter how bad it sounds, no matter how non-politically correct that it sounds. There's some things that need to be said, and that a lot of people are thinking. And you sometimes have these kind of radicals that they say things that go way too far, which that's not good either. That doesn't help. But really, I mean, we're at this kind of crossroads still, where you see all these judges fighting Trump every step of the way just to have some kind of a travel ban for these people. I mean, judges, they live in Hawaii even, and they're trying to say that we have to open this mainland up for them. And it's just a lot different, and I don't know if some people don't quite realize that, or if they don't want to say it, or don't know what to do about it, which I don't quite know exactly what to do about it either. I'm glad more people are talking about it, and I hope more do, and I wish more would. But I mean, people have to just have more honest conversations about this immigration, because the country can go either in one direction or in the other direction, and it would be nice to save it, to preserve it to how it was, and to have all these traditions stay, to always celebrate these holidays openly, not secretly, and not worry about what anyone else thinks about them if they're here. And if the people have a problem with them, they shouldn't come here. They know ahead of time what holidays we have that's known around the world, and if they choose to come, then that's what you're going to get along with it. We don't change to them, they change over here for us. And that's how everyone has a country, and they can expect that same rules back in their country. And each country's different, and that's what makes things good. That's actual diversity, is preserving our differences, learning each culture, seeing that different people. Diversity doesn't mean mix everything together and everyone together and force it all together and expect good results. That's just not really how it works, despite what a lot on the alt-left keep telling us, and what a lot of the elites keep telling us. So we just have to get a hold of the country, like Bannon's trying, and President Trump's trying, and a lot of people more are waking up. But I just hope we do it on time before we keep bringing more and more and more people in, because quite frankly, we're just full. And well, I hope that's the direction that it goes, rather than the keeping on with the open borders and have all this friction here, and with people that don't necessarily like the country. It's just so strange, because this country's so good. We don't have to seek people out. We don't have to lower the standards to have people. We can up them and get the best people. And that's what we should want. And that's really what every country should want.